Okay, so this is the first ever episode of what I'm going to call Hacks on Hacks. And I am the hack. I am an open mic comedian, if you want to call me that. I've performed, I think now, 12 total times. If you want to count the one time I did it in front of four people and walked off the stage after 3 minutes. Very sad. But this is all about the show. This is all about going from the pilot all the way to the series finale. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out Paul W. Downs, Lucia Aniello, Jen Statsky, the big three. I'm a sports fan in addition to loving comedy and loving TV. And they are like LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh on the Miami Heat in their prime. And being the creator of a show, a little bit of foreshadowing for the Hacks fans out there that have seen the show all the way through. When you see created by, that's a big deal, and that means a lot in terms of who gets credit. And all three get credit. So, without further ado, Hacks Season 1, Episode 1, There Is No Line, released May 13th, 2021, along with Episode 2. Yeah, so there we go. You can hear it in the background, but I'm going to mute it because I've seen this a million times. But it starts off with Deborah. She's doing a joke. You don't know it then, but it's her closer. She's in a nice shiny gold outfit. You're not exactly sure where she is just yet, but she's telling the joke. It's about a man trying to sit on top of her, trying to finish. And she finishes strong with the joke about Melissa Etheridge's dinner invite. And then the crowd goes crazy. And she says, I'm still Deborah Vance. And good night, Las Vegas. So then you learn you meet one of the other characters other than Deborah Vance, Las Vegas. They definitely made that a character. And so then she's going through and she's, loving the heels and she's saying, let's use them on Friday night. You can tell she's a part of the show and she is the show, but she also orchestrates what goes on behind the scenes of the show. And then the next thing you see is she bumps into one of the producers or one of the assistants and she has a joke with him back and forth, didn't cover the fucking spread, I'm out 2 grand. Oh, you sleep on the couch more than my dogs do. So you see already she's funny outside of her stand up. She's just a funny person. That's a big point that they're trying to make. And then you see her COO, Marcus, and QVC. They mention that. So you get to really understand that she has an empire. She's not just a comedian. Um, and Deborah's, sitting in front of the mirror, cars out front. Let's party. So then we go into the next stage of her life, and you see she has so many fans. They're all outside waiting for her to sign autographs, and she's on her way to her next thing. And what does her license plate say? It says LV Diva. Incredible. And then the music tells the tale. Um, she's on her way to the jet. She's showing her Deborah Vance rose marble collection, and they sell out right away. And like I said, she has an empire. This is all painting the character. This is the pilot episode. So you have to get interested in every character. You have to get interested in the storyline. You have to learn more about everyone, and you have to learn where they're going to go on their journeys throughout the seasons. So she's doing a little sitting on a jacked Santa's lap. She's getting off the PJ, um, and then it's time to head back to her regular life, which the music tells the tale again. It starts to get a little more somber. You start to see what's going on. She has a mansion. The door is 5 times the size of her, twice as tall, 3 times as tall. And I love the way they do this. She takes off the wig. She puts it on the mannequin head. Soft ambient music, they call it in the subtitles. And dinner's ready. That's going to be another theme throughout the show. Who's making dinner? And there you are, my darlings, but it's two dogs, two small dogs. And then it's a little bit of sadder music. It's darker tones. There's a huge island in the kitchen, and she's literally on the island all by herself. So she's doing her evening routine. She's prioritizing her sleep. She gets the crazy shades going down, and that's a day in the life or a night in the life of Deborah Vance. Then we see Hacks, chills. After being someone that loves this show so much and has watched it a million times, But then we go into just back to business as usual, which is another theme. So, of course, Marty, the owner of the Palmetto in Vegas, is talking about, you know, oh, the fertilizer shows up and blah, 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 blah. And Deborah's like, just leave it on Steve Wynn's doorstep. So she has another joke already. She's very endearing as a character. But you see, he's doing the compliment sandwich, Marty. He's telling her, oh, you've done 2,500 shows. Great. And they're naming a street after you. And Deborah goes, it'll probably be a dead end with an abortion clinic on it. Marty loves it. And then this is amazing. She goes and writes it in her notebook. As a comedian, you know you carry that joke book with you everywhere just in case something hits you. And she's always a comedian. That's a big theme throughout the show. And she writes her own material, which we'll learn in a little bit. But like I said, compliment sandwich. She's giving her the bad news. What if you did less shows a year? And she's like, good for who, you know? So basically, she's aged out of being the primary Vegas residency. There's this group called Pentatonics, a beatbox forward a cappella group, and they do medleys. They won the sing off, and her face is like, who gives a shit? And she even says that. But Deborah is like doesn't fit into one of the categories of people that go to Vegas of a bucket they're trying to fill. Marty says, so she's saying you're forgetting about the third bucket, people from Florida. And as someone from South Florida, I find that very funny and also semi-offensive, but that's okay. So they're having this argument, and she just ends up saying, "Unfucking believable." And then it gets to a theme of the show. He asks her, "Why do you want to do all this? It's like you're not even having fun. It's like you're on cruise control." And she's like, "Fucking wish. I've been playing defense my entire career, thanks to assholes like you." And then he tells her to calm down. Classic. Never tell anyone, particularly a woman, to calm down. And she says, "Where's my fucking doggy bag?" And then, power move, stabs her fork into the steak. "I'm taking this and the fork." And then she ruins his day. "There was a cockroach in my salad." So then, of course, Marty's like, shit, comp everybody. Okay. And then we transition over to the other character on the show, LA, the Capitol Record Building, a big fancy agency. And Ava's first line is, I guess I should just jump out the window. And then Paul W. Downs, aka Jimmy, talks her off the ledge, so to speak. And then she jokes again about, how she actually would kill herself. She said, "I would wear a suicide vest and watch what happens live," which is great. Um, and then we go into Jimmy and Ava going back and forth over why she got canceled. We learn that she got canceled, and she says she didn't do anything wrong, and she starts to get a little sad. And Jimmy's character is a little bit more revealed. He hands her a tissue, and he goes, "You're dripping all over the leather. I just had it upholstered." So it's a cold business. That's a point they try to make throughout the whole thing, is that the industry is changing and it's getting colder. And she's like, "I'm sorry if I was unfiltered and honest or whatever, but that's literally what people like about my writing." And Hannah Einbinder's like that as a comedian too. I watched her special; it was great. It's very honest and it's strong, feminine POV. They say in the show, and also in real life, that's how I think she is. And then she goes into how she bought a house, and it's a townhouse. Well, it costs as much as a house, which makes another point about unaffordability crisis and what's going on in the world and how young people are trying to struggle to make it, because it's not the same as when Deborah was younger. And then she talks about residual Catholic guilt, and she can't help but feeling she's getting punished for getting fingered at her uncle's wake. And that's a theme with Ava, is oversharing and just word salad. I do that all the time too. If you can't tell by now, this is my first one, and I'm just yapping my little heart out. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay, so then Jimmy's, he called everybody. No one's interested in helping her because she got canceled, and then she's ripping a vape, and he's like, "Could you just wait 1 minute?" And she just goes into how unfair it is, and asking, Jimmy asks her for a hug, and they do a joke about HR and touching people, and then of course you see Kayla, who you don't know who Kayla is just yet, but she's Kayla Schaefer. I'll just say that. Um, so then she all of a sudden tells Jimmy that Deborah's on the phone. So Jimmy has to prioritize Deborah. So come on, Chica, get out of the office. And all of a sudden now it's Deborah on the phone with Jimmy. Of course, how's my favorite client? The classic. And then she goes into how Marty wants to cut off the dates, and Jimmy's like, "Oh shit," and appeal to a younger crowd, and you got to do something about this, Jimmy. And then we learn a little more about Jimmy's character. She says, "Don't make your dead father a liar, Jimmy." So then we also learn that Jimmy's father was a powerful player in Hollywood and in the agency business. So Jimmy has to find a solution, really quickly. And Deborah says, "I do not need a writer. I need a manager. Your father would have handled this. Handle this for me, Jimmy. Like I said, don't make your dead father a liar, Jimmy." And then he gets off the phone and he has to make a move. So he's, classic Hollywood spin, agent spin. He has to act like this is an authentic, amazing opportunity. So he sits Ava down. He's like, "So that was Deborah Vance, and I have incredible news. She is intrigued, but by the idea of you writing jokes for her." And then she calls her the QVC Moo Moo Lady, which is, how they set up their relationship is that she's an old hack and Ava's a young up and coming writer. I love the name of the show. That's a big thing that always spoke to me. Not that I am a hack right now, of course. I'm hacks on hacks. But, she's not going to write jokes about how men don't put the toilet seat down. That's one of her lines that she says. She's not that desperate. And then Jimmy says, "Respectfully, as your manager, you are that desperate." And then Ava tries to take it into her own hands, and she's like, "I'm going to actually, I'm going to figure this out myself. I guess I'll have to handle this on my own." And then she just storms out. Little side note, Kayla's, "Girlie, do you need validation?" "Oh, crap, girl, that's going to take me a minute." And then she screams for someone else to come help her. Ava's like, "You know what? I'm just going to leave." And then we cut to Deborah just seeing who was taking over her spot, and it's the Pentatonics, and it's a, not so impressive a cappella with bright lights and their faces on close ups in the video. She chucks the iPad into the pool. "Damien, I need you to go to the computer store." And then we go back to Ava. She's trying to save her career here. She's driving around, stuffing her face with food, and then she all of a sudden sees one of her former writer friends. And she just illegally parks her car real quick, and she runs up on her. And she's having lunch with her mom. And Ava slides through the little gate on the outside where they're sitting, and she tries to force a conversation. And you can just tell she's using this person as an attempt to get another job. She said, "How's your husband?" And she's like, "He's my ex-husband now." And she's like, "Oh, fuck him then." And you see Hannah's timing is incredible. She's such a funny actor. And she just gives her mom a quick little hi, like she doesn't care about the mom. And she's saying, "We're having lunch before my mom goes back to the airport." And no, impossible. Your sister, look at that skin. Get this bitch on Raya. And so then she goes right into schmoozing up her writer friend again, and she's asking if they're hiring. And she just tries to casually brush it off, but Ava's been bugging the shit out of her. And she's been texting her and emailing her, but she got canceled. We still don't know why, but we know that she got canceled for something and she doubled down on it. That's like character development of Ava. We're going to learn throughout the seasons. She's not going to back down. She has a very strong point of view, and she will not be silenced. So now her friend is saying, "Why don't we just talk about this next week?" And Ava's like, "No, no, no. We're going to talk about this right now." And the girl goes, "Okay, fine. I'm sorry, I have to protect the show." And some valet guy is trying to get her to move the car because she's blocking it, and it's just this tension that keeps building and building and building. And Ava's like, "This is so fucked up because you barely talked to me until I got a show." So we learn Ava's pretty selfish, throughout this pilot. But who knows? People can change, right? We'll see. This is episode 1. This is the pilot. We're supposed to be intrigued by the character growth potential. And so some bro is yelling at her to move the car, or he'll fucking kill her. And she says to the mom, really funny moment, "You really do have amazing skin." She does have that actual empathy, but she just has to fight for herself right now. And then we cut over to Deborah. She's in the bathtub and she's signing. She's always working. And Marcus comes in. "I'm sorry to bother you. Your sister's on the phone." "How the hell did you get my number?" So that tells you a lot about Deborah and her relationship with her family. specifically her sister. And then the next thing we learn is Frank Vance died at the age of 74. And then they reference the 1973 sitcom Who's Making Dinner, co starring his wife, Deborah Vance. So apparently, Deborah Vance set fire, and that's all we hear. And then her only comment is, I can't believe they used that photo. That tells you a lot. What tells you even more is Marcus asks her then, do you want to take the night off? And then in this sad voice, she says, why would I do that? And then we cut to Deborah sitting on the stool, performing her stand up, phoning it in, slowly, slowly becoming potentially a hack, a Vegas residency hack. And she's explaining her joke, which you should never have to do if it's good writing and good delivery. Melancholic piano music, according to the subtitles, which I fully agree with. It's very sad. And then we cut over to Ava. She's getting her drink on. She's stirring the spoon into the glass, and then we learn even more about her. She had a girlfriend. It looks like she had, because she seems pretty sad about it. She's just going through old pictures, and then her Postmates is arriving. I also like that product placement, the brand placement. And she looks at the guy up and down. She's like, "Hey," and he's like, "What?" And then it cuts to them having sex, and or they're getting like they're gonna have sex, and she, he asks her if she has a condom, and she starts going through her big boxes that are in the house, or her townhouse, I should say, right? And he's trying to keep himself entertained, I'll say, and she's trying to find all the things, and she's like, "Why would they put the kitchen shit with the like she's getting pissed because she's not getting what she wants." And he goes, "Oh shit, is that a Vitamix?" while he's jerking it. And the phone buzzes, and now we're getting to Jimmy's on the phone. She looks over, sees the guy. She's like, "Really? Did I just do that?" His mouth's agape, and he's slightly snoring. And she just sits on the toilet, accepts the phone call. And then we get another moment of raw honesty from Ava. Jimmy's like, "I tried to call you a bunch of times." She's like, "I'm sorry, I was fucking my postmate." And he's like, "I'm gonna choose to ignore that." And then he lies to her and says Deborah wants to meet. And he calls the guy in the bed with Ava, calls her Mama. "Hey, Mama." And then she just closes the door on him. And you see Ava's like, begrudgingly, if that's the right word, "I'll do it." And then Jimmy's like, "Can you meet today?" She's like, "All right, fine. But do I have to go all the way to Beverly Hills or something?" And no, she doesn't. And then it cuts to her on a dark plane. The current temperature is 111 degrees. And the asshole in the thing next door in the window seat opens up his bright window. And then you cut to Ava walking through the airport. You see people playing slot machines, and she's just disgusted. Her face is like, "Why am I doing this? Am I really doing this?" And then Jimmy contacts Marcus. He said, "How's my favorite CEO?" And Marcus is like, "COO." He's like, "Oh, yes, COO, Chief Operating Officer. You go off, King." So he's winging it. You can just tell that's the whole point. He's a young agent trying to make it, but he's a hustler. They're both hustlers. Marcus is also. So Marcus needs to keep Deborah in business for himself and for Deborah. And Jimmy needs to keep Ava working for Jimmy. So it's a mutually beneficial thing, but it's a big risk. And then, of course, you see the character of Vegas. They show more. They show the Elvis guy, the Elvis hack, riding by in a scooter with the microphone in his hand. You saw Deborah Vance, #1 live show in Vegas, and she pulls up to Ava. Ava pulls up to the mansion of Deborah, and she goes, "We need a wealth tax." Some more politics of Ava, and then we also meet the house manager. She said, "Would you like to drink Would you like a drink?" Basically, and she gives her all the options. And I recognize her from an old episode of Curb. I'll get into that more after the episode, but she basically lists all the fanciest waters, aquapana, and then it was like, "I'll just take the tap." And you learn about the house manager's palate. The aquapana is the best. So you can just tell Deborah operates with a level of class, even the house manager is a well-rounded, classy individual. So now we're gonna get the Deborah character development. She's sitting there with Richard Pryor. Ava's going through the pictures. There's Deborah with Richard Pryor, Deborah on the couch with Jay Leno, Deborah performing at what looks like an outdoor music festival with nothing but a sea of people. And the one picture Ava chooses to pick up is the picture of Deborah speaking at a congressional hearing, is what it looks like. She has the name, placard, Miss Vance, and Deborah is told that a girl is here from Jimmy, a redhead, like the redhead stepchild. And I love how they do that in the writing. So Deborah's like, I don't want to do this shit. And it's all in her face. And then Marcus explains it's just for optics to try to get Marty off her back. So we have the first meeting. The final scene of the episode basically starts. And the first thing Deborah does is refuses to shake her hand. And Ava tries to make small talk about the heat. And, do you ever get used to the heat? Deborah just shuts it down. Yes. And she actually gives her a compliment. Jimmy tells me that you're very talented, and then we get cut off. And then Caitlin Olsen, Deborah's daughter, played by Deborah's daughter, played by Caitlin Olsen, I should say. You find out that she was rummaging through her house, and she has to have her bag checked. So we see that she has some issues, obviously. And she's like, "I'm sorry, I have a UTI. They're antibiotics. I got a fucking UTI. Okay, everybody." I'm so sorry I didn't feel like broadcasting to the whole world, but you got me. You got me, detectives. I need relief from my horrific urethra pain, okay? I mean, the writing in this show is so incredible. And she's chugging a monster. Deborah goes, I'm so glad to see you're getting your fluids, sweetheart. And then she goes like this, like, give me a little kiss. So then, you have to set up all the relationships in the pilot. So that's their relationship. It's you're allowed to be in my life as long as you show me a little bit of affection and do not become a crazy raging addict. And then she says, you have to excuse my daughter. She has a UTI. Oh, and her father just died. So you learn Deborah's thrilled about it. So there's obviously an issue between the two of them. But then you have to ask what Ava knows about Deborah, and that's what Deborah gets into right away. So she calls her a legend. I mean, you're a legend. And then Deborah sits back. Wow, a legend. So you're a fan. Because Deborah, one thing she is not is an idiot. And one thing she won't suffer is fools. You learn that a lot throughout the show. And she's a businesswoman as much as she is a comedian. So Ava tries to bullshit her. And, Deborah says, I've written over 30,000 jokes. Just pick one. And Ava does a crazy move. And she says, I would have to say your TV show is my personal favorite thing that you've ever done. And then Deborah's like, my sitcom from 1973. You've seen it. Of course, the generational gap is a big theme throughout this show also. So she's like, I mean, I've seen clips. And Deborah's like, clips? Wonderful. Well, and then of course Ava tries to BS her and talk about the actors on the show that she worked with were stand-ups. That's not BS, but Deborah just senses that she's full of it and says, I don't work with writers. So then they both realize that Jimmy sent you against my wishes, she says. And Ava's like, I'm going to kill him. She's like, no, I'm going to kill him. And that's when they start to form this bond. You don't even realize it, but it's happening. And, at least you didn't waste too much time researching me, Deborah tells her. And then you realize that they're about to form this relationship where they go back and forth. It's a big theme throughout the show. And Ava is going to fight for herself, and so is Deborah. So the first thing they argue about is a little thing about, her shoes. I think she's wearing Doc Martens or the boots. I don't even know what they're called. But she was, they showed her walking through the airport in them. And Deborah goes, good luck with your career, honey. Fucking bitch. Excuse me? Did you have something else to say? And then it starts. And then she, Ava calls her out for being rude, but she makes the mistake of saying she dropped everything. And Deborah says, oh, you want a gold star just for showing up? Deborah's a hard worker. We saw that throughout the whole episode. And Ava seems to be a lazy person. And she complains about Spirit Airlines, and she didn't want to do this in the first place. And then the big punch is she didn't want to write some lame jokes for an old hack. And that's when Deborah goes, I think you better leave. because they're both comedians first and writers first. Calling someone a hack is the most offensive thing you can do to any comedian. I haven't been in it long enough to be called that, or maybe they do it behind my back. But she calls her a classless monster, and she says, "I'd rather work at the Cheesecake Factory than work with you." And they go back and forth over the tassels on the couch, and even Liberace would be offended. And she's like, "Actually, he loved it. He did poppers on that couch in '85." And she goes, "Cool. I'm glad Liberace's butthole was nice and loose in your house. Maybe you should have joined him since yours is tight AF." Uh-oh. And then she gives the final, do you want to inspect my bag? Maybe I should just piss in a cup. You know what? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to just leave a stool sample on your lawn. And then Deborah breaks down and authentically laughs. And then you get the goosebump moments when she's like, "Why are you really here? If you're so in demand, why are you meeting with me?" And Ava's it kind of explained that it was a bad joke. She tweeted about a closeted senator sending us into a conversion therapy camp. So we learned what she finally got canceled for. We finally learned what she got canceled for. And then someone dug up her old tweet, and when she was 20, it's like she got canceled the classic way people do nowadays. So yeah, she's saying it ruined her life. And Deborah just says, it sounds like a Tuesday for me. But what she doesn't understand is how technology is really impacting young people nowadays. Because actually, people really do care. It's been a huge fucking problem for me, she says. So she wants to hear the joke, of course. Deborah, she wrote 30,000 jokes. That's what she does. She wants to know the joke that supposedly ruined her life. And there's a pause. She's not sure if she wants to tell her, and then she tells the actual joke. Apparently, he heard it from one of the guys he was sucking off in the Senate cloakroom. That's the punchline of the joke. And she's like, she doesn't even write jokes like that, but she was just so mad because he got caught with a male escort. So the hypocrisy is what really pisses her off. So she has a political point, but it just got taken the wrong way and blown out of context. And then she was asking about where the line was. And Deborah said, "Oh, honey, no, there is no line." So we get the name of the episode in the episode. It's one of my favorite things that writers do. And Ava hits her with her ultimate knockout punch, she thinks. And she's like, "I'm not surprised, basically, that your sister left you for your ex-husband. And you think it's over." And Deborah comes zooming by, and she's like, "Holy shit, why is this woman chasing me? What is she doing?" And Deborah has such a long driveway that it's like a speed chase for a solid 10 seconds. And the gate's opening, and you think Ava's going to make it out. And Deborah just zooms in front of her, I think, it's a Rolls Royce maybe. And she cuts her off. And you wonder what's going to happen. And Ava's trying to lock her door. And she's like, "The only thing you're going to convert him to is from a top to a bottom." So she gives her just the better punchline. So that means that Deborah was writing it in those 30 seconds that she was chasing her down. And she's like, "No, no, no. We keep it on the dad." So they're already working together. They're already becoming a comedy team, a comedy writing team. So this is like the stuff that gives me chills, and this is the reason why I love this show. This is the reason why I'm looking into a camera and talking about it, because I love this. And she says, "Senator Rogers has been in the closet so long, he shits mothballs." Yep, that's pretty good. That's it. And so they came up with a better joke together. They collaborated. And Ava's like, "Can I go now?" And she's like, "No, you're hired." And then Ava says that, I didn't want the job. And she's like, "Well, you need it." So you can see she's kind of like a motherly instinct there. And she's like, "Write me 20 jokes before tomorrow." And then she tells her what not to write about. And she basically becomes her employer. And Ava's like, "What the fuck just happened?" And then Etta James fire music in the background. And you see her with that little smirk. Deborah has that little smirk like, "Okay, this could be something. This really could be something." Boom. Directed by Lucia and Yellow. Created by Lucia, Jen, and Paul. Hacks, Episode 1, Season 1, Episode 1. There is no line. Man, I love this show so much.